The title of the book is Anathem, which is like anathema with one A removed, or anthem with an A inserted into the middle. Words with very different, sort of opposite connotations, and that was something that I was trying to suggest in the choice of a title. I decided to set it in a different world that has a history of ideas that runs in parallel with that on our world, but because I was sort of making it all up, making up the history, I could kind of streamline things, and it just naturally stayed a little simpler and cleaner than the history of a real world. I didn't want this to be one of those science fiction fantasy books where you start reading it and every sentence, every paragraph has got a couple of words you've never seen before and you're kind of disoriented. It did begin to develop its own vocabulary anyway. I heard from a couple of early readers that they would appreciate having a glossary. I had hoped to avoid that, but at the same time I thought back to when I first read Frank Herbert's Dune. So when you open that book and start reading, the first thing you do is go through quite a few pages of glossary material. By the time I got to the end of that glossary, I was completely fascinated with this world. So I began to think that maybe having a glossary wasn't such a bad thing after all. The narrator of this book, the main character, is a guy named Erasmus. He's a Fra. That's F-R-A-A. That's the term that's used to mean a male avowed. So Fra Erasmus, or Raz, it's been about 10 years since he was collected from the outside world. So when he was a kid growing up outside, he was marked out as being this kind of weird boy who liked to sit in the corner and read all the time, which in the extramuros society is an abnormal behavior and generally means that you need to be taken to the nearest convent, the nearest monastic community, and basically dropped off at the door. He's getting his first opportunity to go outside the walls and kind of see the world that he came from again. And what he sees, of course, is that he and the world have gone off in very different directions. People are constantly talking on cell phones, for example, which they don't have on the inside. And he's kind of rattled and disturbed by the fact that people are always being interrupted by calls. People in this world are separated into those who live intramuros. And these, by and large, are not religious people. They're the mathematicians, they're the scientists, they're the scholars. And they've chosen to devote their lives to that instead of doing something else on the outside. The ones on the outside are ones who are either completely illiterate or they're illiterate. They can read, but they choose not to. What that really is, I think, is a sort of distinction that I think that we can see every day in the society that we live in now. And what I've done in this book is to just amplify it tremendously and try to turn that into the basis for a fictional world and for a story that's set in that fictional world.